Thank you so much for being here. My name's Shayna Kataya. I'm the incoming superintendent as of December 1st and very proud to be here and grateful for all of you that took the time to be here on a beautiful Tuesday night. I know you're probably running around kids from place to place. So if you haven't been to a Power Hour before, we offer quarterly each year an opportunity just to get together and speak on different topics. We really do stick tightly to the hour time frame, so you know when you come, you'll be out of here at 7:30, and of course I'll be here around after tonight if you have any additional questions or things you'd like to share. There will be opportunities for you to share. It's really important for me by the end of this evening that we have some time just to hear about your vision for the district, things that you really want me to consider as I begin and continue my entry planning process. And if there's things that you're not comfortable sharing or you'd rather just leave behind with me, certainly feel free to email me directly or call. But there's Post-its on your table too. There's a little parking lot on the window over there. So feel free to leave any thoughts, questions, things you wish you heard more about, and I'll be happy to get back to you or take those thoughts into consideration as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started. For tonight, I'm going to do just some quick introduction of myself. I know my bio and picture have been out there everywhere, so sorry that you've been flooded with that. So I know you probably know a little bit about me. I'll briefly touch on what some of my experiences have been and how I've been beginning to prepare to transition into the superintendency. And then I'll talk about my entry planning process and what I envision for really creating a 100 plan and beyond transition into this role. And then I want to answer any questions that you may have. Some people put some great questions into the RSVP link, so I will try to answer some of those ahead of time. But of course, any additional questions you have, I'm happy to stick around and answer. And then, as I said, I'd love to keep our last 15 or 20 minutes together to hear from you. So at our tables, we'll be doing some feedback sessions so that you can just give some feedback and learn a little more from each other. And I might ask my Board of Ed and administrative friends to help just kind of facilitate some of those conversations. Okay. So with that, I am going to have us just introduce ourselves at our tables, and I will start and model. So I'm Shayna Kataya. I am a Pittsford resident. I've been here with my family, my husband Kevin, and my daughters who are at Barker Road Middle School and Mendon High School. We've lived here for over 20 years now, and my expectations for what our schools will provide for my children. I expect that our schools are going to provide safety and a safe place for them to have as many opportunities as they would like to have. So rigorous academics, which looks really different for my two kiddos as it may look for yours, and opportunities to learn about themselves, to learn from others around them, and to be able to really grow into the people that they want to be. And that's really my expectation for our schools. So with that, I'm just going to ask at your tables if you could just introduce yourself, who you are, if you have children in the district, what schools they're in, and if you have some ideas that you'd like to share around what you have, what you expect from our schools. I'll give you just a couple minutes to get to know who's at your table. Okay, so thank you for taking that time. Hopefully you got a sense of who's in the room or who's at your table, and you will have some more time to talk and learn from each other and to share some feedback with me and with our Board of Education as we start to move forward with some additional goal setting and strategic planning. So just a little bit about myself. I have been a teacher actually here at in Pittsford when it was Pittsford Middle School at the time before we built Calkins Road, which is now 20 years old, which is crazy. So started in the district right out of college here from Nazareth. I became an interim assistant principal at then Barker Road Middle School, and then I left and went to Brighton for 4 years and was an assistant principal at 12 Corners Middle School, and then came back home and was a principal at Barker Road for 7 years. And I think that 11-ish years of being a building leader is really what changed the trajectory of my world in education and understanding more about what our teachers go through on a day-to-day basis outside of just my own classroom and the roadblocks that they face and ways that we can help them, what our families are dealing with, and the trajectory of a year for them, the things that our students need from us, and just being able to look more at a systems lens at how we can make change within a school building. And of course, I'm looking at some of my principal friends who we led through our first pandemic together. And so we learned to make some quick decisions and keep students at the center. And that really started to lead me toward student services work, which I've been in for about 5 years. This is my 5th year in that role. And that was also during the pandemic. So overseeing health services and our equity work, looking at all the different student supports for mental health services over that time, really gave me more of a district lens. And I've had the great opportunity to work closely with our central office team and our Board of Education, and of course our superintendent doing that during that time, which is really the experience that made me think that I might have the ability to be able to step into the superintendency. So a few years ago, I took the opportunity to be in the Future Superintendents Academy through New York State Council of School Superintendents, and I'm now currently in their new Superintendents Academy. So those are year-long experiences where you get to network across the state with some very experienced superintendents and people who are new in the role, and really do a lot of learning together. Those are the things that have really set me up for success and building those networks of support. But the most important thing has really been just the time that the Board of Education has given us as a district to make this transition successful. So to have months together is something that is not, I think, typically done. And I can't imagine having to do this transition without the time that I've had. So throughout the summer and this fall, I've had probably over 50 meetings individually with community members, with our collective bargaining unit leaders, with teacher leaders, our legislators. So many of you are here today, but also came to the meet and greet that PTSA held at the end of the summer. So just being able to have time to talk to people about what the things are in the community that they feel that we should hold on to and that are really sacred to us, but also things that they feel like we need to address. And so this is one of those experiences tonight, and we will continue to seek more community feedback throughout the year and beyond. So as I said, getting voice from the community has been really important to me. So even though I've been in the district for over 20 years, I have my own experience and my own kind of slice. And it's been really important to me to just open my eyes to the experiences of others, because I'm in this role, I'm really here to support everybody. So what I hope to do following this evening is gather more feedback. So I have lots of feedback I've gathered along the way. Your voice tonight will continue to add to that. And then really dig into some data analysis. So looking at everything from our financial data to our student achievement data to qualitative data from our surveys that we've sent out, from the meetings that I've had individually and from nights like tonight, and really start to see what are the themes that are arising and what does that mean for us as we step into new leadership in our district. And with that, we have, within the first 100 days, we will have some budgetary issues that we need to contend with. So we are, again, in a very tight budget year. So being able to make decisions that are fiscally sound and that meet the needs of our community and what our community values is going to be very important. We have some capital planning that's coming up. So you will see another referendum coming up for a capital project that's going to tackle things like clean air and water, air conditioning, roofing, boilers, things that really help to preserve all of our investment in our community and in our facilities. And then, of course, throughout the year, it's really important to me to just be as visible as possible and just engage with as many community members as I can. So I want to just touch upon certainly any questions anyone have here tonight, but there were questions that were given in the forms that were really interesting and lots of different varied topics. So I'm going to do my best to kind of run through some of the questions that people had. And then if there's follow-up, I'll certainly do my best to answer any of those. And then I'd like to preserve some time just to be able to hear from you at your tables with the folks that you just met about those same ideas. So what are the things we value? What are things that we feel like need to be addressed? And then longer term considerations. Okay. There's a lot of meat here, so I'm going to try not to talk super fast. Okay, so first there were questions from a few folks just about rigorous instruction, access to academics and achievement for their students, and that kind of ran the gamut of several folks just wondering, what are we doing to make sure that we're preserving where we are? So we know that our students rank historically, men in high school, Sutherland High School, number 1 and 2 in the area across the county. We know that across the country, we're seeing that rates for reading and math are falling. And if you saw our last board meeting, Heather Clayton, our ASI, reported that our scores are on the rise right now. So part of what we're trying to do is really assess how we can be more consistent, given that our students are more varied and much different than they have ever been. So whether it's post-COVID, whether it's social media, electronics, we don't know what exactly it is, but our kids, their brains are wired differently. And so what we've done in the past may not always work now. So we're trying to look at really going back to the roots of our MTSS. So within schools, our multi-tiered system of support is how we meet the needs of all students at the tier 1 level. So that's what every student gets. And then what are the things that we need that maybe when students need a little bit more, and then maybe when they need more than that. And so really the root of that is, what are we doing that has giving our students a guaranteed and viable curriculum? So right now, if you heard, Heather Clayton was reporting about our math and ELA. We had an ELA program review about 2 summers ago. So just looking at what are the resources and the strategies that we're using that are no longer aligned with the science of reading, or what we know now are best practices, and how can we make sure that we're being consistent, so that it means that whether your child has Miss Jones or Mr. Smith, they're using the same resources and they're getting an equitable experience. And so similarly in math, when we brought on the Amplify curriculum, again under Heather's leadership, we now have the first ever consistent math program that's being used across all 5 buildings. So those are some of the things that we're doing at the elementary level. And then you might have seen, if you have students who are at the middle level, iReady is starting right now. So we have a screener for all of our students in grades 6 through 8. So the theme you'll really be hearing is consistency. So how can we get consistent data about our students so we can make decisions that are not based on whatever tool a teacher decides to use, but it's really going to be consistent across the board. So one of the things that's important, I know to me as a parent and to a lot of parents here in Pittsford, is that we want our students to be ready for whatever comes next. So we've been really accelerating students not only into the 4-year college track, but also vocational studies more and more have been really important for our students. And looking at alternative programs for students that might need something that looks a little bit different so they can be successful post-high school. Our schools continue to have incredibly high rates of students going on to 4-year colleges. So when our college and career counselors come in from our colleges, they know when they pull up an application and a student's coming from Pittsford Sutherland High School or Pittsford Menin High School, they know what that means in terms of the level of rigor. And more importantly, what our students are telling us from our postgraduate survey is that when they get to those 4-year schools, they feel prepared. And they feel prepared in comparison to their peers who are there with them. So that's important to us, but we know that the landscape is ever changing, and so we don't want to let off of the gas on that piece. The other thing I think that's important to know about academic achievement and rigor, and like I said, it looks different for all different students, but what we've seen recently, and I would say in the last 5 to 10 years especially, is a significant increase in the diversity of our students. And so just in the past, since February, we had 65 families come in that were screened for ENL services for students. So students who don't speak English at home. 55 of those students ended up needing additional services. And I just pulled data the other day for a student who's doing some research for something in high school. We have over 500 families who speak a language other than English at home in Pittsford. And so that's almost 10% of our student population. So that number is much different than it was 20 years ago. And so that is providing the type of rigorous life experiences for our students that we could never just input to curriculum. So they're experiencing with their athletic teammates and with their peers in class, students who have different cultures, different religious backgrounds, different ideas. And those are the things that are really going to help our students to be successful in the greater community. Yes.
Trying to be patient and wait. One, I appreciate you taking time to have this there needs to be community and, like, trying to stick to there, but, I don't want to actually forget, some of the comments that I want to make, and really, focus on some of the things that we just shared there. As you talked about diversity and this kind of 10% number, I would be interested to know, okay, how is the school adapting to these children that come into this district? My experience so far has been very traditional. And I'll be honest, I ask myself the question every day, did we make the right choice in moving here? Because, I'm sure some of you are parents in this room, but, there's nothing more important in your child's well-being and safety. And that goes beyond academics. And so I would be very interested to know that. I think sometimes it's not just about the specific interventions, it's the gaps in between. And so, yeah, and you don't have to go to all of it now, but just be interested to hear more about how the school is adapting to this new way of choice. Even for my son, I think some experiences have been positive so far, and some have been not so positive, and I found the school to be, like I said, have a very traditional model that I can see families and children struggle with. And this is something that I've spoken to others about who have had a similar experience. And me, myself, I have an education background. I'm a licensed therapist. And I understand the challenges of being at the senior level. I'm a CEO. I have 175 staff that, I monitor for a large organization. So I understand the challenges at each level. But I do think that it's, it's a responsibility for leaders and organizations to meet that challenge. And in terms of academic rigor, I want to just make this observation, this comment, where I've seen my child struggle is because we have the resources to bring in interventions outside of school. And so I know that Pittsford has a high success rate with their kids, but it's also a resource-heavy community in terms of the folks. I would venture to say that probably 95% of the folks that live here could leave if they needed to. They have the resources to leave.
Or
so
right.
Yeah, and so it's a choice. And so I don't know, but it's just a lot of things to consider. But as you can see, I got a lot on my mind, so I'll stop there.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I appreciate it. And you're absolutely right. A lot of our success is driven by the fact that families move here to Pittsford because they value education and they know that this is the place to be for that's why my husband and I moved here and wanted to raise our children here. Having said that, as our demographics have changed, we have had to change and adapt. So we're constantly looking at our programs for things like ENL, and are we doing enough with translation services? Do we have ways to provide resources to families so that they know that they're there? Do we understand the cultural differences enough to know how to meet people where they are? And our demographics have been changing over the past 15 plus years. So there's been a lot of work that's been done in things like our libraries and our resources to make them more culturally diverse and to meet the culturally responsive sustaining education framework. So a lot of that work and training has happened, but I truly believe this is the work of our careers. So this is a time where we are never going to be there. We have to keep working. We have to understand more of people's experiences, because if we don't sit down with people and ask, then we won't be able to understand. So I do appreciate you sharing that, and would love to sit down and share with you some of the equity action plan that we have. And we know that there's a lot of work yet to do in that plan. And I'm hoping that over the next year or so, when we do look at some of this data that we've talked about, we can actually create a strategic plan that does help meet our community at where we are now and not where we were 10 years ago, and really set some targets for ourselves so that we can see actual improvement. Yeah, but I appreciate you, and I hope that you're able to look back and feel that you made the right decision for your children being here in Pittsford. Okay, let's see. So technology, safety, and AI, there were quite a few comments around a whole amalgam of things around technology safety, a few things around how smart our kids are and how they keep getting through our firewalls, and do we know this, and what are we doing about it? So yes, our students are very smart. They do things like download, and I learned a new word, sideload. You can sideload things and onto the applications of a computer. So we did just switch over from Windows 10, which is no longer something that's supportable, to Windows 11. So we had a lot of those things under control. Now we're working with a company we've worked with in the past to help build some of those protections into our systems now that kids continue to find ways around. So we're always playing catch up a little bit when it comes to that technology. But it's important to know that it's something that's on our minds. We have some software, things like class-wise. So our teachers, when they're in the classroom, if the students are working on something, they can see all of their screens. They can freeze their screens. They can see if someone's playing a game or something when they're supposed to be doing research or whatever the case may be. We also have some web filtering and monitoring software. So if a student is looking up something that is concerning, so whether it's around self-harm or violence or something that we really want to make sure that we're paying attention to, we receive those notifications. Then we can go in and look click by click and see, okay, they're doing research for a health project around mental health, or they're looking at things that are concerning and we need to intervene and make sure that they're getting the support that they need. So those things continue to happen. But again, we know we need to keep staying on the cutting edge of all of that technology. The most important thing is letting us know. So if your child's playing a game or they're saying, oh, I get to play a game on this in this classroom every day, let us know, because we do have blocks on those sites. So things that are called gaming sites, we block. But if something new comes out and it hasn't been categorized appropriately yet, it gets through our filtering system. So a lot of times it's a teacher coming over and saying, what is that? And then we send an email and we get that site blocked. So if you see something and you feel like it's not appropriate for your child to be using and it's not educational and it wasn't assigned by the teacher and it's a gaming site, let us know and we can go ahead and add that to our list of blocked sites. That was an ad from the technology department. And it's important to know that we in schools fall under what we call Ed Law 2D. So any privacy issues around the vast amount of information that we hold. So we have a lot of information about our students and about our staff, and we hold it very carefully and we take that very seriously. And so any company that we work with or any vendor that we work with that uses our information server, so Typing Pal or Infinite Campus or Frontline. So any software that we use within our schools, they have to be certified that they're following Law 2D compliance. So New York State helps us with that. They have vendors that are licensed and make sure that they're safe to be able to be working with schools and the very sensitive information that we hold. The other thing that's important, we were just talking with there's a superintendent's advisory council of students who are unbelievable from both of our schools, and they were talking today. We were talking about the cell phone ban and how that's going. They had great feedback, better feedback than you might think, but they had some questions and concerns about their devices that they use in school, their district issued devices, and because of this cell phone ban, we no longer allow them to bring their own devices. And so they're now letting us know of some of the shortcomings of the devices that we have. And so we are, again, under Heather's leadership with Matt Kwiatkowski, our technology director, we're going to be surveying the district to see, first with our staff, how are we using the one-to-one devices? Are we varying our activities to make sure that we're still using pen and paper, that we're still giving kids hands-on approaches? And what are the other professional development opportunities that they might need to be able to use those devices more efficiently? But then also to families and students, what are the things that are helpful in class, that are not helpful, what's working, what's not? And mostly we just want to make sure that the devices that we're all investing in are giving our students access to what they need. So that will be coming up. Staff one's coming out shortly, and then the families and students should be coming after that. There were some questions around sustainability practices. There was a great article in the latest newsletter that went home, so that will dig in a little bit more. But we have had and this is really around environmental sustainability, the questions that came across in the link. And we have had a sustainability committee over the past couple of years, and they set aside 3 goals to really focus on. And we've had some key staff changes that have delayed some of those things a little bit. So we do have an elementary school that is piloting composting in their lunchrooms in order to help with food waste. And in terms of our universal free meals, we have seen an increase in food waste, which we knew that we would. And our universal free meals, which has been an incredible amount of work and unbelievably successful due to our food service program, our food service department, we do plan to extend that into grades 6 through 12 in this upcoming school year. And so we know that the food waste will only go up. There's not really a way to prevent that, given the guidelines from the Universal Free Meal National School Lunch Program. But what we can do is say, okay, with the food waste that we have, how can we be as environmentally friendly as possible? So the goal is to take that pilot and extend it across our schools. We do know that this will likely take more staffing. And so between the universal free meals and looking at some of these environmental practices, we would likely need to recommend some additional management in the food service department to be able to help oversee all of that. A couple other items. So they have a couple other goals around our recycling processes and looking at outdoor learning spaces. So those are things that are yet to come within the goals of our sustainability committee. But something that's been out there that you may have read about is around the electric vehicles and electric buses in schools. So there is a mandate from the state that schools after July of 2026 have to start purchasing buses that are electric. And so you will see a referendum coming up, and we will be working toward that for electric chargers and electric buses. We know that there's infrastructure needs for that. There's utility needs for that. So we know that RG&E has already told us that they cannot sustain or give us the amount of energy that we would need to run our entire fleet on electric buses. But we know we can start moving toward that direction, but that's something that our community really needs to buy into as well, because there is a cost associated with that. So it's a balance of moving in that direction and making sure that it's something that's financially sound. There's a lot of grants out there, but making sure that our community is behind that initiative as well. And I think that's it for sustainability. I already talked a little bit about, we have some air and water pieces coming up with our next capital project. So we will be up for another capital project in this February for a vote. You'll be hearing a lot more about that. And actually our next power hour, which I believe is towards the end of January, will be an opportunity for our architects and construction company to come out and actually present a long-range plan so that the community can see and ask questions about where we're looking in terms of sustaining our facilities over the next decade. Okay, we're almost there. There were a couple community members who just mentioned the stress, which they're probably just coming off of right now from the transition years. So elementary to middle school to high school, those years, and just feeling that they needed more support. So I think that was really important feedback to hear. There was a power hour we did, I believe, if not last year, the year before, where we had counselors and administrators just talk about that process. But the angst people were feeling made me think no one would know that that power hour was there to view if we don't continue to push it out. So we can do a better job of just sending some resources. And internally, we have a lot of processes for preparing the next building for the cohort of students who are coming to them. But any feedback you want to give around just how families are feeling or additional supports that families feel that they need during those 5 go 6 and 8 go 9 years. I know as a parent who's been through both of those, there's a lot of angst and there's a lot of feelings and emotions coming from children and parents during that time. So we want to, do anything we can to help just soften that transition as much as possible. Okay, I did it. I hope I didn't talk too quickly. So those were the main questions that people had ahead of time, which I hope I was able to touch on a few things. If there's any other questions that people have, we probably have about 7 or 8 minutes, and then I do want to transition into allowing you to give some feedback at your tables that we can take with us. But any questions that people have right now? It was a lot of information I just spewed at you. Okay. Okay, so this is what we're going to do at our table. So as promised, I'll give you the end in mind here. We are going to have one of our district members just join each table so they can just take the information from you. And we're going to go through these 3 questions. So first, and each person will have an opportunity to share, what is sacred in our community that you would want to see preserved? What are the short-term issues that you feel need to be addressed? And then what are the long-term considerations that we should keep in mind? These are the same questions that I've asked in all of those individual and group and legislative meetings that I've held. And so at the end of my whole kind of listening, learning sessions and time, I really want to see what themes have developed, and I'd like to report those publicly. And so I think just to be as transparent as possible with what I'm finding during the time that I have preparing for this transition. Please know that all of your information is kept confidential, but we do want to talk about what are the themes that our community has shared with us throughout this process. And this is not the last time for a community event, so we hope to have some focus groups later on this year and then a forum later in the spring to be able to really start kicking off some of our strategic planning work that will happen in the months and years to come. Okay. All right, so I am going to have someone bring a note catcher to your table, and then we'll start with the first question, and I'll just keep us on task time-wise. Okay? Okay, if we could just wrap up your last thought there, and then we're going to just come back together, and we're almost at the end of our power hour. Thank you so much for our note takers who jumped in at the last minute to help, who didn't know they were coming to work tonight. Thank you. And I'm just looking around. I always feel so proud to be here in Pittsford schools and to be somewhere where our community truly, one of the things that we all agree on is that we value education and safety for our children, and we really come together around our children. So nights like this just remind me that we have so much more in common than we don't. And when we have opportunities to be together, it really shows the best of us. And so thank you for taking the time to be here. Please know that I'm always available. So reach out. We can sit down one-on-one. You don't have to wait for events like this, although I really appreciate your voice tonight and being here, and know that there will be more opportunities for us to come together and bring new voices to the table, and know that your voice will be really important to me and to our Board of Education as we continue to shape what our schools will look like moving forward. So thank you so much for being here. I'm here if you have any questions. Please remember you can leave Post-its up on the parking lot or follow up with an email or a phone call. And thank you again for your time tonight. I really appreciate it.